This podcast contains adult themes and language. The views expressed here are our own opinions and experiences. We are not medical professionals.
In this podcast, we discuss our opinions about mental health, sobriety, addiction, and our pursuit of happiness and peace. This is Sober Mind.
Oh, yeah. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Ooh, Judy's mic is coming in hot. Toasted.
Am I coming in hot? Sorry. Well,
You want to keep that one up because that's the stream mix.
Oh, over here.
Could probably do there. Here.
you know what? BRB, I need my notes.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Man, all right, Patrick, let's pull ourselves together.
Yep.
Patrick and I ran 8 miles this morning, still in training, obviously, for our half marathon, and we're doing good.
I was happy to get back out there. Got my miles in this week, even though that a lot of them were walking.
That's okay. I was very surprised with your ankle healing because it was looking like a big old purple swollen elephant's foot.
Yeah, it's pretty nasty, pretty gnarly, still bruised.
Yes.
Pretty well. So
I'm glad your ankle's feeling better.
me too. It just taking care of it. I do know from Judy's notes that we should probably do introductions.
Yes.
Proper introductions.
Yep. I was going through my notes here and yeah, we got a bunch of things going on. So hold on, I got to start this one. Started the recording. I'm also going to do the local recordings on the Roadcaster, Patrick. Why not? Okay, good morning. My name is John.
I'm Patrick.
And I'm Judy.
And this is Sober Mind. Here we talk about our journey with sobriety and mental health. And we have adult conversations around all of that. So buckle up because it could be awesome or it could just turn into a shit show. We never know.
Yep.
Yeah, but both of them are so much fun.
Yes.
So what are we talking about today?
Today we are going to talk about the art of listening. And where
Are we going to do gratitude first?
Yeah,
though?
Yes.
absolutely. I just would like to tee up the topic and
Yep.
then we
Oh, got it.
Yeah. I like to see how
we're figuring it out.
all three of us are trying to stay so organized. We're like, hey, what the fuck? What's the next bullet point? Hold on. I'm going on my list.
All right, I'll let you try.
Yeah. The first thing I would like to say is, all right, let's get some music going here in the background. We hear you squeaking your mic around, babe.
Sorry.
Okay. Patrick's got his alerts going on his phone. See? Shit show in progress. Okay, some quick housekeeping. What I wanted to do is let everyone know that, hey, we appreciate all of the support that we've been getting. Look, it's time to have a moment of candidness here. Doing all of this is not free at all. The main component that we pay a pretty decent amount of money for is the podcast portion. So a lot of people listen to us on Spotify and Apple Music and anywhere where you can get your podcasts. The problem is that stuff costs money. So I've talked to a bunch of folks and I've looked at some stats and there's a lot of people, hundreds that listen to the podcast, but that's a money out situation. What we'd like to do is eventually get money in. Let's be honest. We enjoy what we do, but paying the bills would be nice because we're getting ready to build a studio down in the basement. It's going to be epic.
Yes. I'm so excited for that.
So where I'm going with that is if you are listening to this podcast, please go over to youtube.com/@sobermind and subscribe. That's it. That's all you have to do. Pause your podcast. Go to youtube.com/@sobermind and please subscribe and hit that like button. You know,
We'd
all-
appreciate it.
Yeah, we appreciate it. It helps the channel grow. It helps us get to a stage to where we can continue to produce all of this good content. And hey, don't be selfish. Just go fucking hit subscribe. Man, it's not so tough. I know. Thank you.
Dang.
Okay. Yeah, let's do gratitude. Who's ready? Remember, if you're new to the show, what we do is we start every show with a moment of gratitude. I'll go.
Start it off.
Again, I was very happy when I woke up this morning to just be able to wake up healthy and get out of bed and go for that 8-mile run. Full disclosure, I did try to sabotage myself again. I was like, oh man, I'm so tired. You know, Patrick's ankle's sore still. I bet if I just text him and say, hey, let's skip today, he'll be like, yeah, sure. But then I'd be like, that lazy son of a bitch. John, get out of bed. I was like, what are you doing again? Trying to sabotage. But anyway, I have a lot of gratitude for my health and happiness and just being able to pay the bills and take care of basic life expenditures.
That's a good one.
Judy?
I am grateful for being able to go and visit my family. I have an aunt who is up in Michigan, which is about 12 hours from here, and she's 93. So it's nice to be able to, I'm grateful that I was able to go and visit her. But, you know, I don't get up there very often. So I wanted to visit her and her daughter, my cousin, Nancy, and Aunt Valeria. And I just feel grateful that I had the opportunity to go and visit them along with my other aunt and my cousins who are also up there, other side of the family. But that being said, I feel really grateful about being able to do that.
Yeah.
And be sober to do that too.
Patrick, what's your gratitude?
I'm going to call Judy on. I'm going to be grateful for Judy because last weekend, you know, like you guys had done the show without me a couple times. And you'd mentioned about the dynamic changing. I definitely noticed it last week. And I'm thankful for...
Without having Judy here?
Yes. And I am just so thankful for I really enjoy our dynamic together, you know, and you came back focused and you brought notes and, you know, kind of articulated how you felt like you wanted to invest in the show and the relationships and kind of grow that. And I really am thankful for, you know, kind of how you brought that forth and like you know, it wasn't like we need to come back and we need to do better or we did this like I mean, you did it with open arms and I'm like, yeah, heck yeah, let's do this. I'm on board with it. And at the same time, you were definitely sorely missed last week.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yes. Well, thank you, Patrick. Okay, good morning, Michelle. Oh, well. Look who has graced us with his presence. Odie. All the way from Serbia. He has decided to take a break. Just a precious hour of his Baldur's Gate 3 gameplay to join us.
You know what? You got to give him proper.
I know.
Because it like infected through me. Now you're on to the Baldur's Gate 3.
Yep.
So.
Yep. Man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could get in. That's again, this is... I love how we digress into the gaming stuff, but I was thinking about this. I wanted to talk about it. It's pretty apropos. Baldur's Gate 3, for those of you who don't know, it's a Dungeons and Dragons based video game. It's the desktop rules version 5 or whatever. Yeah.
I do. Don't look at me. I'm not that deep into the
Odie
weeds
will
on
back me up on that. Anyway, so it's, you know, it's a gorgeous game. The dialogue and the cutscenes are just amazing, but it's theater of the mind as well. So this is
very much so. Yeah.
This is what has, yeah. Shadowrunner for the win. Shadowheart for the win. I don't know. I have a love-hate relationship with that
I don't know
character.
about that.
Okay. Anyway,
That's the beauty of it. You know, like they spent good. Oh, all right. We're going way down the rabbit hole. But
Anyways,
it's very good.
So about the gaming is that I find myself getting more attracted to this because I have to sit and I have to pause my brain and I have to focus. And what I mean by focus is I have to take myself out of situations and really think strategically and tactically. So it's nice. It's not just your normal everyday video game.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's a lot like playing chess.
Yeah.
You have to, a few steps forward thinking, I guess. I don't know how to
Yeah,
say that
I mean,
any better, but yeah.
It's interesting, that community. I've always thought they've supported the very strategic thinking and being engaged and, putting team compositions and understanding tactics and how you're going about something. But there's just, because of that, there's like 1,000 different ways to skin a cat in the game.
Mhm.
So it's like, one thing you can't do is just sleep through everything. But there's just so many different ways for stuff to unfold.
Yeah.
It's fun to play.
It's definitely not a run and gun type of thing.
Yeah, right.
No?
Yeah. Mm-mm.
All right.
You will die.
All right. No more game discussion. We're done.
Sorry.
We're done. Okay.
Okay.
So today's subject is the art of listening. It was interesting because I had thought about this, and then Judy came back and she said, "Hey, I want to talk about this." And she brought up some examples of some things she was going through, maybe with family members and whatnot. And
Well, plus it was one of those organic things that came about when I was talking with Dad. We're sitting in a car for 12 hours, so we started talking about it, and we talked about the really deep down juicy bits of just having a good conversation with someone and how to enact that, how to do that.
yeah, and so she brought that, and I was like, that's interesting coincidence, because I had thought about the same thing. And where this came from was, so the art of listening. What does that mean? After the show last week, you and I had an offline discussion about some things that you were dealing with. And you were just talking. And what I found myself trying to do was, I'm thinking to myself, what do I tell him? What does he need to hear? What does he want to hear? How do we do I give him a strategy or
You were putting on the cape,
yeah,
ready to save the day.
How do I fix this? Yeah.
right. So was I listening the whole time? I pulled myself back a couple times, and I'm like, hey, just sit here and listen, so I don't know. That's what I want to talk about today is how do you listen, Judy? Patrick, how do you listen? How do I listen? What are the rules that are in place for that? Are you supposed to have a conversation of, oh, Patrick, you're talking to me. Do you just want me to listen? What are the rules of engagement for that stuff? Because I think that's important to know for us to hone our active listening skills. It takes energy from you listening if you're sitting there trying to problem solve.
It's dynamic. I remember a colleague of mine that I used to work with, when he was talking with his husband about this, they had a ground rule of like, if somebody comes up and is frustrated and is venting, one of their first questions right out of the gate may seem very informal or blunt, was, do you want comfort or do you want solutioning? Because it also depends on the state of mind of the person, because being analytical and in your head as much as you are and I am, and even Judy, like, there are times where they're like, yeah, I'm just running through the permutations, and just understanding more options is definitely more beneficial. But there are times when it is more emotional based, where I have to word salad everything out, and I'm just literally sorting everything out on the table, and I don't need you to add more stuff, like just being there and holding that space for me to start setting it out on the table is beneficial. So it goes both ways. And I think that's part of the art of the dialogue, is learning to either read, we use visual cues a lot to, to read off of who we're discussing with. And it's the level of trust factor and engagement too. And if you're confused, then sometimes asking that question, do you want comfort or do you want solutioning, is an appropriate question. It may seem rude or unempathetic, but I couldn't think of anything more empathetic to ask at that point.
Yeah. I think one of the things is just to be able to read the room, so to speak, you know, quote unquote, read the room. When you go into a conversation, if not everybody has the skills to do that, but if you do have the skills to do that, when you're having a conversation with somebody, read their emotions, read their body language, read their responses and what they're really, really talking about. If they're just spouting off stuff, then most of the time they really just want to be heard. They just want to be validated. They want somebody to actually hear them talk and acknowledge them and say, you know what, I'm really sorry you had to go through that. Or, wow, that is fantastic. Congratulations. You know, just something that says, I hear you and I validate you. Most of the time, that's what people want. If they want answers, then they'll probably say, well, what do you think? You know, and they'll push you, hopefully. If not, then you just have to see if, you know, ask that specific question, well, how did that make you feel? Or how did kind of guide them to their own answer. But not everybody has those tools to do that in a conversation.
Go ahead.
But read the room is basically one of the things that I'm trying to teach myself to do.
Yeah, I struggled with that a lot. And you're right. Actively validating somebody or active listening is validating what they said, either in a short summary. And that's not just to point out or mirror back. You know, mirroring is a very important thing for listening. You know, it shows you're engaged in the same space. And then confirming what they just said for active listening isn't just like, hey, this is what you just said. It's a conversational point where you're waving. You're like, okay, I'm processing this. I'm getting on the same page as you. You know, we're going down this journey together. And I think that's what part of that providing that space is on listening. And I would say that I struggled with that early. You say reading the room, because how many times have we talked here before where we're like, are they paying attention to me? Are they judging me? You know, when you walk into a room and
the glass frog.
The glass frog, your ego goes bananas, and you're thinking it all through the lens of yourself. Like, what are they saying about me? What are they doing this? And you're just waiting for, like, you're literally building your environment to wait for cues about you. And so before the show, I talked about, I struggled early because my mind was in overdrive. I thought conversation was a sport. I'm very verbose and like to articulate, be long-winded, and always seeking validation. I think it's a sport where I'm like on defense and I'm just waiting to intercept the right point. Oh my gosh, there's a quiet part. I'm jumping in. I'm taking over the conversation.
Yeah.
And I realize how off-putting that can be a lot of times. You know, that is not active listening. That is not providing space for others.
Yeah. It's sometimes it's wanting to be heard for the sake of just wanting to be heard.
Right.
Yeah. And I also think that blends into kind of the addict mentality, because sometime in their life, this is not, you know, exactly every addict, but sometime in their life, they were not heard. They were not validated. So they turned to other things to self-validate or, you know, make themselves feel more accepted. I do think that does bleed into the addict mentality of not being heard, not being validated at a young age.
Yeah.
I know that, you know, were some of the traits that I suffered from at a young age was not feeling like I was not being heard and not being validated for who I am. Even though I was a kid, I still knew, you know, kind of my own mind at certain points, and to just be blown off, and it sticks with you. I have a story. When I was a kid, I was about 5 or 6 years old, and I was with our babysitter, and she was, you know, giving my sister and me a shower and trying to hurry us up to put us to bed. And I was trying to get conditioner out of my hair. So it's very minor, but I was trying to get conditioner out of my hair, and I hadn't rinsed it all out. And I said, there's still some in my hair. And she says, no, there's not. It's supposed to feel like that. Hurry up, get out. So I got out and I woke up the next day and I had greasy hair because I knew even at 5 years old that I didn't have all the conditioner out of my hair. Now, that is a very minor, small story. I mean, it's so insignificant. But at 52 years old, that still causes me to reflect upon that and still get a little bent out of shape that she didn't acknowledge me for knowing my own self. So, I mean,
you're absolutely right. Conversation is one of the first primary areas where definitely the addict mind, we don't know how to validate self, and we're always seeking elsewhere. Conversation is just one of those mediums that happens very early at age. In fact, you can see, kids with ADHD or, just behavioral development stuff, kids acting out. Pay attention to me. That's what I need, because they don't have the tools to communicate. So I would wholly agree. Like, conversation is one of the realms where, it's really hard to develop those skills to be able to sit and listen, because the brain is so validation or ego driven just from the get-go.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed. And I also think that building those conversational skills is an opportunity that's often missed by, for me in particular, by my parents. I think there's a lot to be said about being able to sit down with your child, especially at a young age, and have conversations and see how that just let those conversations play out versus having a dictatorship style of parenting, or just, shut up.
You're just a kid. You're just a kid. You don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, as we've been talking about this, I've been thinking, when can we hone those skills? And it's for sure it's a lifelong practice, but I think that it's honed during your youth. That's your social foundation. Versus if you don't get that, like I did not at home, then I ended up getting it from the playground with children that don't have good conversational skills, and then I was in the Army. Fast forward to that. So it wasn't until I got into my professional career, way late in my time on this earth, that I started going to leadership courses and how to influence people and how to have conversations and stuff, that I came home and I told Judy, this was like 9-10 years ago, I said, hey, a lot of the stuff I'm learning in my professional life, I find that it benefits me a lot in my professional life too, because
you mean?
Yeah. That I missed out on a lot of the, it's a social skill, being able to talk and listen. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I didn't start learning it until I was older, until I started reading and investing time in my own self. And then one time I had a friend, we were talking about astrology. What are the zodiac signs? Anyway, we were talking about that, and me and her fiance were the same sign, and it just came across as, well, you guys are nothing alike except for this one thing. And I said, oh, what's that? She goes, you like to talk about yourself. And it just kind of brought me back to, wow, okay. She goes, yeah, it's not, it's a little disturbing, because when we're in a conversation, you always bring it back to yourself, and you always, compare it to your own experiences and stuff. Well, yeah, we do that on our mind, but we don't always need to express that. And plus, I was always trying to put myself forward instead of listening to everybody else and listening to what they were going through. It was very much ego driven, me, I. And that kind of set me back as well. So just made me think about that, and it altered my direction with conversation.
Yep. For me, it's definitely been having kids has been a big change for me, because you're exactly right where it begins, and it's so hard to kind of walk through, because I talked about active listening, repeating back what you just heard to the speaker to acknowledge that, you're getting there in the same space. With my son, I talked to you when we went to the Oktoberfest or whatever, and he saw the memorial and, started playing with it and didn't respond to my first couple of like, hey, hands off type of thing. And so I had to not only like take him aside, but a good effective thing is literally getting down on his level, and talking through that. And it's so tough with the younger kids sometimes because like you said, my parents were just like, just why are you doing that? That's wrong. Just do it this way. And, I'm finding myself like, very similar. I understand their feelings. Like, why is my 8-year-old and 6-year-old fighting over who opens the cereal box first? It's like, what the fuck is this about? It's like, I want to be like, it's a GD cereal box. Just pour it and be done with it, right?
Yeah.
But you have to talk through and be like, okay, and this is what I've talked about is frustrating for me sometimes when I'm like, I just want to wake up and have coffee. I don't want to go into a 15-minute dissertation of like why we respect each other's boundaries and trying to articulate, I feel, seen when I open the cereal box, I want to be. So you have to sit there and walk through those discussions, as absurd as they may sound or like underdeveloped as they may be, like when they're getting upset and dealing with the emotions, like that tool of walking through those is what is being given to them. And you know what? It's repetition. So there's a lot of days where, we're always doing that, but there's a few gems that pop out that throughout the day where like they came through and like I remember once I was having a tough day and Flynn was like, man, Dad, I'm sorry to hear that. Would you like to play some video games with me or go build some Legos and think about something else or talk to me about it? And I was just like, what? Who are you? And, it's like,
That's awesome.
Didn't you just get done?
That is
peeing
so
all
cool.
over the seat and in the bathroom. It's like, all right.
Oh, out of the mouth of babes. That's awesome.
Right. So it's just that you're absolutely right. It's that repetition. I don't own the action of others. The best I can do is lead them out of the way. And that's not me like trying to dictate to others to what. That's a reminder for me. Like if I want to be heard, being a better listener is where I start.
That's good. I like that.
Yeah, for sure. And it goes the other way too. We're speaking of figuring out the social cues or how you set up the foundation of the conversation. The other one is to understand that you don't have to react always to situations too. I think there's an expectation that some people have. I know a person that, like, when I show them something or have a conversation, they always try to respond with something, to the point where I've asked them in the past, I said, hey, you don't have to react. You could just not say anything. You can just look and just be here and be present. And as I was thinking about that, I thought, man, that's tough for me to do. And it takes practice. I think that's also something that comes with developing a little bit of stoicism, which I think is important as well. Sometimes it's okay just to be quiet and not say anything.
Yep.
Yeah.
This is middle way concept. There's a difference between locking the emotions away,
Right.
and then an appropriate time in place and setting to address them.
Hence,
right?
read
Just
the room.
in making sure to approach them directly, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Odie says something in that vein exactly. Says, I had great listeners, but sometimes I regret sharing later. Good friends listen and want to offer solutions, but they always don't have the solutions. And that makes them feel bad and helpless. Then I feel bad for putting them in that position. So more often than not, I prefer to keep stuff to myself. So that's the other side of the spectrum too, is that, I want to tell Judy something, but Yeah, I don't want her to have to carry the burden or share any anxiety with me, so I'll just shut up. And I'll just sit here and stew and you know, get toxic with something. And then it's like, well, what's wrong, babe? What's going on? Nothing. Yeah, there's clearly something happening.
Mm-hmm.
So very strange that we don't, the easiest solution is just there, and that is to talk and for someone to understand how to listen properly.
Yeah.
But it's,
I think go ahead.
It seems cumbersome sometimes to talk about how we're supposed to talk. I'm guilty of wanting to seem like I know how to have the conversation and how to have the answers. Because I heard someone say, like, I really enjoy talking to John. I should have followed up with, why? Well, I want to know why. Is it because I don't say anything back, or I don't know the answers, or, you know, why do you enjoy talking with someone?
If you could fill out a short survey afterwards, I would appreciate this.
Yeah.
Please rate this conversation that we just had.
I mean, there's other complex factors into it. You know, when you find your own ilk or people, so to speak, you know, it's easier to have a high degree of trust in that safe space. And then other times, you know, you're just not everybody's cup of tea either, right? And so it doesn't matter how you would approach the conversation, they may take it in poorly at the same time too. So I wouldn't.
That's the risk we have to take sometimes.
Yeah.
To be able to be our authentic self, as Dr. Mate encourages us to be our authentic self. That's one of the things that we are going to run into, is there may be a discord, or there may be a bad reaction that comes back. And hopefully there isn't, but it's one of the risks we have to take sometimes.
Right. Well, and it kind of circles back to what we talked about last week. Where does it all sort of live and breed? Ego.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's you know, how if I'm in this conversation, this is how I think I govern my talk with people, especially if I'm just getting to know them. Are we putting on a show? Are we being our authentic self? More often than not, I think we're putting on a show. Our ego is driving all of that by selling ourselves. It's our caveman mentality. Here's what I got to offer you. Here's what I can do for you. This is why you want me in your tribe. It's not, hey,
here's how good of a person I am that you want to be with me.
It's to the degree of trust. You're absolutely right. And that's what's confusing about conversation, is because we'll open up conversation with a low degree of trust. And that's not saying I am distrustful. I'm saying I open up conversation through theater and other politeness. You know, oh, that weather today. You know, we have tons
social niceties.
We have tons of scripted social niceties that we play by, and that's almost like a wall, right? You know, I can put this veneer up, right? But for the art, if we're talking about the art of conversation, you know, that you don't really need a lot of active listening in that. But as soon as somebody comes up, is like, you know, like, how you doing today? Living the dream every day. You know, the time you walk in and that guy that you haven't had a lot of deep conversation with, they're like, yeah, fuck, man, you know, getting a divorce, and, you know, car broke down today. And like, prior to that, your only conversation has been social niceties, and like, it's like, how do you be a good listener in that? Right?
First response is, hi man, TMI. Too much information. Whoa, back up.
Right? But at the same time, you want to be able to, like, the fixer in me in the past wanted to be like, you know, like, okay, I guess this is what we're doing, and either stay actively engaged or shut it out, like you would say, is just like, yep, we're not dealing with that fucking shit today. You know, it'd be like, sucks to suck, you know, it wouldn't be that mean about it, but, you know, would throw up another social nicety to dismiss the conversation in a short manner and leave. Verbal smoke bomb, spike, run. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of how conversations go in society.
Just
like, if I
ninja
don't
out.
want to deal with it, it's like, oh, I got a text call thing, but okay, thanks, bye.
Yeah.
And you're out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, because you're absolutely right. There's that, hey, how's it going? Can't complain. Well, no one will listen if you did. This is like I've mumbled. I've said, hey, someone's asked me how's it going? I'm like, I really can't complain. And then as they're speaking it, I'm doing like the Breakfast Club, like no one will listen. I'm like, I already knew it was gonna come out of your mouth by just saying that. But so back to the art of it. There's also there's a fine balance of that social interaction and having a conversation too. I've given myself so much liberty and grace. People are like, hey, how's it going, John? I'm like, I'm an alcoholic. I got mental health issues. They're like, Jesus Christ. That's just
Whoa.
too much. And they're like, I
Pump
don't.
the brakes there, buddy.
Yeah, too much for me to digest. I
Yeah.
ran into a guy at a store one day. I think I forgot to tell you about this, both of you. I'm like, hey, how's it going? Nice day outside or whatever. And he's like, I'm still sober. I'm like, what? Just a random conversation. But yeah, so it's those. So now we're getting into the sociology of it versus active listening and how do you have conversations?
So
Judy and I have ran into some really interesting people by being able to have just a random, probably a wholesale showmanship conversation, but injected with a little bit of reality as well.
So it's awareness and trust. I will always go back to trust in a conversation. If you truly trust a person and feel like this space is safe, bringing those stuff up as a non sequitur, like if somebody could bring that up to me, like if you were to come up to me and be like, oh shit, it's a bad day today, such and such happened, like if you came up to me just like right off the cuff and said that, I feel comfortable enough in our relationship and trusted enough that I'm willing to have that conversation. And if I don't have time for that or I'm previously engaged, this is the part where it becomes hard, because it's like if somebody says that, I could just be like, oh, yeah, John, it's Tuesday. Fucking sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, or, like nobody's going to listen to you anyway. I could throw up a social veneer to dismiss it.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, for me to communicate that level of trust and be like, John, that sounds like some serious stuff. I would love to be able to either help or provide space to talk to you about it. Unfortunately, I have a previous engagement than I do, but I would like to set aside time in the future or find space for it, right? You have to clearly articulate your needs, wants, and desires. And that means I have to admit my failure right then to say, like, I can't be your superhero and I can't be your kicking post.
Yeah.
And that sucks because you came, if you address that to me, I'm like, wow. In my mind, this is all behind the scenes stuff, right? It's like, oh man, he trusted me enough to say this. I got to step up. I got to be the hero, or I got to be here. This is what we're doing.
Yeah.
And for me to have to say either I have a previous engagement, this is the hard part to struggle with life, navigating these decisions and clearly articulating the emotion that it's pulling within and say John, I care about you a lot and this conversation is really important to me. And I want to be able to be an active listener, but I can't do that right now.
God, that would make me feel like shit though.
But that's a you thing.
I know. That would really hurt my feel. That would make it when you're saying that, as I was thinking, if I had Patrick, I need to talk to you about something. And if you gave me that response, I would feel overwhelmed.
But I also trust our situation that, you're not doing that to me when we're in passing or I'm shuttling the kids off to the soccer game either. You know how to read the room in our relationship, right? You know how to say
You
This
know
is a good
when
time.
and when is a good time to bring these things up, and when is not a good time to bring these things up.
Right. Like when we're running and I can't like run away from you, you're like, all right, I'm going to cork one open now.
Yeah.
He's stuck with me for another hour.
He's like 2 minutes faster.
That's
what
right.
are you doing? Why are you trying to run away?
So I have a question for you both.
Well, real
What
quick,
do you
babe.
do?
Real
oh,
quick,
go ahead.
that's so I'm gonna ponder that later too. I gotta put that in my bag of shit I gotta think about at 2 o'clock in the morning. Is that I don't know. I don't like that response. I gotta figure that out. That's a me thing for sure. But if I was like Patrick or Judy, I gotta talk to you about something. Like I really want to have this conversation with you, but I've got to. I am having a heart attack, so I got to get to the ER. I'd be like, you don't have time for me. Yeah, I really got to digest it. It's interesting. Go ahead. Sorry, babe.
So I had a question. How would you approach a situation when there should be a trust issue between you and the other person? Like the other person is a relative of yours, or, well, yeah, like a relative of yours or a good friend of yours. And you know that there's that drop in dialogue. There's not going to be a good give and take in that conversation. How do you approach that?
Those are tough because you and I were discussing this the other day, and so there's a multifaceted answer to that, and I'll try to keep it succinct. And that is, are you wanting to address a behavior that someone has instilled in their overall architecture for their entire lives? Or are you wanting to open up that line of communication and say, hey, I would like to have more heartfelt discussions with you, but I feel like it's just a one-way street. And where Judy's going with this is that I intentionally try not to do this because it bugs me so much. And that is, Patrick, tell me you had a good run today.
I had a great run today.
Hold on. My
Nice.
run was better.
One-upsmanship.
Let me tell you about way back in 1992. Here's what I did.
The one-upper, the 400
Yes.
percenter.
Those are the
Yes.
those are the conversationists that are tough. And but so how do you, I guess that's what Judy's asking is, how do you approach that? I would like, because if someone were to say to me, I don't know. I don't want to make it about me, but it's
it doesn't validate what I just said. Like if I was to say that I had a good run or I had a good exercise or my garden is doing fantastic, there's no validation of what I said. It's immediately turned back to, well, mine is so much better or mine is so much worse.
Right.
It's their ego, I guess, again. Or that person or persons just are not secure enough in themselves that they need to make sure everybody else did I hit it on the nose? that they're not secure enough in themselves, and they want to make sure that everybody knows their 2 cents is been heard.
So, but before you answer, Patrick, let's go back to Judy's ask originally was, how do you approach this? Of how do you ask for a dialogue adjustment moving forward?
Yes.
So my answer to this is, I want to divide this out into 2 pieces. One part is addressing the trust factor with long-standing relationships, and then the other is a very specific type, which is the one-upper, the 400 percenters I call, because that's a very distinct trait in conversation from what we were talking about, and it's not uniquely tied to the long-standing relationship. First and foremost, there's a quote that runs in my mind that got thrown around wrongly, and it's always like, blood is thicker than water, and people would use that to relate family, like, because we're family, we have a high degree of trust. Just because you've known somebody for a long time does not mean trust is inherently high. I'm going to be honest about that. And old relationships, especially with family, are just littered and buried with those behavioral trip mines. I don't know how many times do I feel like I can say, like, I've done a lot of work, I'm an active listener, and I, show up professionally and I show up for my kids. And then there are just some people I get around where it just like my OS just rewrites itself to like an older version really quick. And like 15 minutes in the conversation, I'm like, what the fuck just happened? How did we get here again so easy?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's addressing behaviors. And the best way for me to do that is boundaries. Always set the boundaries. And that's clearly articulating your needs, wants, and desires. Hey, it's really going to be hard for me to set an example without having some very personal items in there. But it's like, hey, I would love to do this activity with you. But often when we engage in this, this is where speaking from the I comes in very handy. Like, I feel X, Y, I feel this way when you have this behavior. So in order for this action to happen, and then you set out your boundaries, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to be firm on them too. So and this doesn't mean harsh or judgmental. Like when they cross that line and are eliciting a specific behavior from you, you have to say, thanks, I set this boundary, it's going to be some time before we can engage again or whatever.
Yeah.
Or do
I agree.
And it's hard. This is why, a good tool for addicts on especially old relationships, there is real cause for no contact or low contact for certain parties to be in the best benefit. Because they need to build those tools to do so. And
They also need to build themselves up too, because
Right.
they could be in a relationship where that other person just keeps, hammering them down. And for them to grow as an adult, they need to distance themselves from that.
Right. And, in reference to I just forgot the
One up for the 4%er,
the
400%.
the triangle, the drama triangle.
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
the
You have
dry, yeah,
a
yeah.
victim,
Rescuer.
rescuer, and the persecutor. The behaviors that come out, if somebody's spent a lot of work at trying to climb out of that victim role, it's amazing. Like you put them around old people in the old roles from the persecutor or the martyr or whatever. It's amazing. That's what I was saying. It's like a tripwire. Just those old feelings just come back up. And I mean, it's those are long behaviors. So again, I will just reiterate setting boundaries with that and having the awareness to be able to do so is one of the healthiest ways to approach that. And the second part is the one-upper or the 400%er. And I call it the 400%er because it's always like, I had friends and relatives. There were a couple that, it felt like every time that you told a story, their immediately response was one very similar, where it was either embellished or like, oh, you ran? I did twice that distance at twice the speed, right? And it's exactly to your point, Judy. You hit it right on the nose, and I don't, we can talk about it more, but I think it is just a direct reflection of like someone that interrupts conversation a lot. That was me. That I was always seeking for a point to be validated because I didn't know how to validate myself. The one upper is I don't know how to validate myself. This person is seeking it. It's like the first in line. Like if I'm giving out prizes for being fast at running, that's like, oh my gosh, I'm being validated for a quick runner. The competition is like, I want to be the first. When I'm handing out validation, when somebody sees it, oh, you're training for a marathon, John? Good for you. And somebody goes, well, what the fuck? I trained for a full marathon, not a half marathon. What about me? What about me? Where is my validation if we're handing out validation on running?
Yeah.
I have more sympathy for those, but that is a very, as far as the art of conversation goes, that is a very difficult one for me to have because it reminds me of, if you've ever tried to talk one ground rule of AA is you don't show up drunk. Like if you're looking to get sober, like there are many groups that are just like, look, yes, we want to be here. We want to be able to help, but you can't, you got to be off the booze for 24 hours or a certain time frame, right? Like you got to put in at least that level of engagement. That's same with the 400%er. Hey, like I want to like, this is the boundaries for those people. Like I want to, like, you're a dear friend. I want to have the conversations that are very deep and meaningful. But whenever I bring up a certain item that you feel incumbent upon yourself to like either one up or like step over that, I feel like you're directly invalidating me to supersede yourself.
Yeah.
There's the answer, babe. Easy.
Yeah. And the unfortunately for me, the last thing I want to do is have a conversation with that person.
Yeah,
Because immediately I shut down.
Because if you say it like that and they don't have the tools, fuck you. You're not a good runner. I'm just letting you know I'm better. If you need advice, come. It's like that. If you hit a weakness like that directly on the nose, like you do it to me right now, what do? Shut down, turn inward, or lash out.
Mm-hmm.
So again, art of conversation of being able to bring up that boundary, but you can't. This is the suck ass part about conversation. Like you have to clearly articulate your needs, wants, and desires, and set that boundary clearly. And it may suck sometimes.
Yeah.
And you know what may happen because of that? The person might not engage in the relationship afterwards. But guess what? That's not a fucking you problem. That's a them problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. Odie made sort of the comment around that vein. Not everyone appreciates when you're honest with them, but at the same time, they are not okay with you being dishonest. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Very much so.
And it's your fault either
that's a
way.
good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good.
No matter what, it's your fault.
Yeah, that's a good perspective from the victim, right? If you bring it up, like, shame on you for trying to call me out. And you're like, no, I'm just trying to let you know this is how I feel. And, to negotiate, I would love to hear about your exploits during running or, how they may be similar or, like that's the part of the conversation that I'm looking for. Oh, you ran a marathon. What did you feel that was the most difficult part? Or, how did you feel during that? Like open that as a gateway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking too that gateway cue is, especially if you run into someone that has similar interests or conditions or whatever, and that is, just a quick beat. Excuse me, I just burped. Just a quick beat of, I also have that interest, but let me hear more about yours. Then it turns in, then all this, then talk about an energizing conversation of,
yeah.
Dang.
That's a good back and forth.
That's how Patrick and I first met on the sidewalk. He's like, I've been sober for 18 months. I'm like, I'm a fucking alcoholic too, man.
Yeah, I heard the best way to like get in somebody's head or get them to talk about themselves was like either some weird dating advice or something, and be like, oh, you're an investment banker? I heard that the regulations aren't are just creating too much havoc and they're just worthless, and like just it's like spelling on the internet. The best way to figure out if a word's spelled wrong is directly spell it wrong.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right? And they'll correct you.
Yeah.
If you go and if you ask somebody what one of their likes is, or if they're commenting on their better runner, like you really are the biggest Star Trek fan? Well, what did Luke Skywalker say at the end of this? And they're just like,
Yeah.
I also think another thing that we've discussed, we've hit on multiple times is being present in a conversation, because there's conversations, if they're not, and I hate to say this, if they're not interesting, my mind starts to wander off to what I need to do later on today and what I need on my grocery list and being, I think, which is something I need to work on, being a good conversationalist is being present in that conversation.
how do you be
Because
present?
then,
How
do-
do you like to practice being present?
Turning off the other dialogue that's going on in my head and focusing exactly on what that person is saying,
Yeah.
and really hearing what they're saying.
For me, that manifests in behavioral cues, meaning turning to face them, right? Squaring up, looking in the eye,
Oh, yeah.
not fidgeting. Stuff that I've learned that I do and that my kids have picked up on. And so when they are ready to not listen,
You can tell.
I'm like looking in the mirror. I'm like, where did you learn that? And they're like, you. I learned it by watching you.
Oh, that's the hide in the pot commercial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Hey, real quick, I want to acknowledge someone on the podcast live radio show. His name is Big Chief Thunderlung. He said he was in Paris Island in '93 with a Lund. Well, hey, thank you for joining the show there, Big Chief Thunderlung. No, I was in the
I
Army.
love that name.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I was in the Army in '93. Thank you for your service. But yeah.
Good times.
Where did you learn that from?
Yeah. But
Yeah, I think-
go ahead, babe.
I think that for us to really grow as people, we need to learn to have really good communication skills. That's a big, neon sign for me that I am working on every day, is to be a good communicator, to be able to diplomatically, as my father says, diplomatically tell somebody to go to hell so they enjoy the trip.
I love that one. So,
But that's another Kellenism. So, but just to be a good conversationalist, to be present, to be in the conversation, to read the room and realize, does this person really just need to vent? And can I just be here to let them vent and not take any of their stuff personally towards myself and, worry about it, but just to be a listening ear for that person? Or is this person actually seeking advice or a path? I think that's something I'm consciously working on as I get older.
You're absolutely right, Judy. Just that being present. In IT, I prided myself on putting on the cape and fixing everything that was wrong. But I realized in customer service, it wasn't being like, oh yeah, you filled out that form wrong. No wonder it didn't get sent in. I fixed it for you. You're welcome. Like what is that? The Nick Burns on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
Move, I'll fix it. Like you're doing it wrong. Meeting the customer where they're at is what I'd call that. And then the conversation is the same concept. Meeting the person where they're at and providing space for them to build that trust. And so you can have those deeper conversations is important. So with the customers, it was like, oh man, that was, I understand there's a lot of information out there and really confusing. I would take that feedback and, we'll work on, that became an item for development. Like that gave my teams the best success. Oh, that form was confusing. Yeah, we're going to pass this on to UX and develop it and making it an ease of entry for the customer. Right. Or just validating them. Like they're just upset about something. Oh man, I understand that's really frustrating. We're here to work through it. It's not perfect, but just knowing that we'll be there. Different customers just require different responses, even though that they may have the same problem. Same with conversations. And it begins with us, meaning we didn't learn to validate ourselves. So we were constantly seeking that all the time, trampling over conversations, walking through it, doing our own 400% or seeking. Mm-hmm. Now, when we show up in a conversation, it took forever for us to develop the dialogue to validate ourselves. And that meant from forming these weird emotions into maybe some grunts and a few words into complete sentences. I'm feeling this way about this. And now, that took energy to get from that state of feeling to state of understanding.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. Yeah.
Now we have to, get to be able to show up. And it is harder with others because we don't get to hear their internal dialogue. But at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
Going from just trying to understand where myself is at is a fucking journey some days. And when somebody shows up on a different wavelength, you know, that is a fucking, you know, it can either send me off the rails or rock my world. But I think that's ultimately one of the best exercises to do and to get out of our own head, is to like give ourselves the grace and patience to be like, this person's obviously on a different place. You know, can I begin to understand that? Or, you know, can I provide space for them to either grow that trust, or, you know, like, you know, how can I show up as the best Patrick right now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And part of that means like, all right, Patrick, shut the fuck up. This is how you're showing up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
And listen.
amazing the parallels between customer service and good communication.
Right.
Good customer service and good communication.
For sure. Guys, it's 11 o'clock.
That was quick.
I know.
How
Yeah,
are we gonna,
I told you this was a juicy topic.
Yeah.
how are we gonna put a bow on this one? Did we get through all the points? Are there any items that, you know, you feel
No.
like that we missed?
I think we hit them pretty much on the head. I was just reading my notes, and we've covered all of them
Good.
for the
All right.
most part.
I know you got stuff going on, Patrick. I need to eat, man. We burned, was it average of 1,300 calories on an 8-mile run?
Oh yeah, you're selling that brisket to me.
Yes.
You gotta get some of that.
We got a little bit of burnt
Yum-
ends. Oh,
the
man.
yummy in my tummy.
20-hour brisket, 20 hours on the smoker, man, and it was delicious. The flat got a little bit dry, but it's all right.
Did you want to do the questions?
Yes. So go ahead, babe.
Oh, okay. So what I was thinking is that any of our listeners that are out there, I'm sure, have one or two questions. And if they wanted to submit those questions to us, we could answer them on the air.
Yeah, not just questions, but, you know, topics too. You know, if there's any
Yeah,
prompts in
topics,
there.
comments.
And if you could spend 5 minutes on this survey afterwards. I'm just kidding, guys. I'm not going to ask you to do that. But, you know, we love to hear from you. So just, you know, feel free to throw the questions in or prompts, you know.
Yeah,
We love the interaction. We want to be better listeners too.
That's right.
exactly.
Yep. Okay. Let's wrap
All
it
right.
up. So again, thank you for your support. If you're listening to this on Podbean live or through your favorite podcast app, please take a moment and go to youtube.com/@sobermind and subscribe.
And hit that subscribe button.
Yes, it'll help us out. It'll help us out big time. Next steps are we got to put our heads together and talk about how we're going to start to build out the studio down in the basement, and so
so excited.
so that way we could get all three of us together and
In the same room.
in the same room. As a reminder, Judy is here in this house. She's just around the corner in a different room. Okay, that is it. That was a fantastic show.
Yes. Thank you, guys. That was
Yep.
awesome.
Yep. Let's wrap it up. I keep wanting to talk about stuff, but we're gonna call it.
If you or someone you know is struggling with mental health, please contact the Suicide and Crisis Hotline at 988. Also, if you need help with addiction recovery for yourself or someone you know, please check out Al-Anon. Be kind to yourself. Be patient with yourself. You are loved.
All right. Yes. Be kind to yourself. Be patient. Give yourself some grace
Mm-hmm.
while you're going
Most
through your
definitely.
mental health journey.
Yes.
All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next time.
See ya.
Bye.